The Constitutional Court has agreed to hear the former President Jacob Zuma's application for the rescission of the Apex Court's ruling on Tuesday. The highest court in the land ruled that Zuma be sentenced to 15 months in jail after he was found guilty of contempt of court. Zuma's supporters have since been gathering at his Nkandla homestead, pledging loyalty and support to the former president. A social media account believed to belong to his daughter posted a video of people firing guns with the caption, "Shooters out in KwaZulu, we are waiting." Could Zuma supporters be threatening war? What options do the police have? To help us unpack the story, I'm joined by Africa Analysis Senior Policing and Global Security Specialist Eldred de Klerk. Eldred, always great to have you on eNCA. Thanks for your time this morning. So firstly, how do you think the police have handled or failed to handle those gathered at Nkandla in defiance of level 4 regulations? I mean, they've arrested surfers in previous lockdowns and people, carrying alcohol in their vehicles. But in this instance, they have been very glaringly absent while regulations and COVID prevention protocols are blatantly flouted.
Well, on the face of it, we would want to suggest that the police is cognizant of the fact that there's a high risk of retaliation and that they have to manage this too. However, on the other hand, they also have to manage, as you rightly cited some examples, the optics of the situation. What that appears is that the police seems to be unduly distinguishing between a crowd that they feel that could be potentially hostile. And they obviously have to rightfully do so and assess the situation. They can't just blindly go in there and enforce it if there's real risk to the public, if there's a real risk of harm or injury or even death to police members or to those who they're seeking to disperse and or arrest. So they really have to make that distinction and make that assessment. However, when they make that assessment, they then also have to be aware that you and I, as the general public, view this. We are not privy to their thinking, and what they are failing to do is communicate their thinking. We needed uniformed police officers to go onto the scene to explain to people, look, you in violation of COVID regulations as a standard level 4. These are the real risks to your health. This is our duty, is to ensure that we mitigate those risks and that we ask you to please physically distance, to sanitize, to wear your mask. Failing to do so, there could be action taken to you either immediately and or at a later date. However, so police are failing to communicate their reasoning at this time.
Let's get to some of the legalities here as well, apart from the contravention of lockdown regulations. There have been threats of violence made by supporters themselves and fueled by family members of Mr. Zuma. His son Edward and his daughter Dudu have both made inflammatory statements promising violence and inciting supporters to use violence to defend their father. Heaven forbid there's actually bloodshed as a result of this incitement, but could they be arrested for these statements with or without actual violence ensuing?
Yes, they can. They run a number of risks. There's a number of considerations. One of it is the Regulations of Gatherings Act that says conveners should not place anybody in harm. And if there is any culpability or there's any harm that gets done, they can potentially be called to order and to call to account to that. There's also, we also have the Dangerous Weapons Act. We see people brandishing weapons in a situation that should be peaceful, and the right to dissent and to voice that dissent is obviously there. It's a constitutional right, but it should be doing so peacefully and unarmed. So we have a number of situations that has been flouted. We have a call to undermine, potentially undermine the state, and that is something that the state has to weigh up. All that the police can do at this time, if they are discerning police, they are aware of the risk and threats, is gather the evidence. Gather the social media post, go out there, record, monitor, and observe the situation. They can also go a step further, and that is restrict access or manage access to Nkandla on the road, to the number of people coming there, and explain all the time why they're doing this. Our police is failing to communicate. And this is the critical lesson, I think, for me over the years, and that's how police has managed other situations. This failure to communicate, the failure to account to both those of us they serve, whether we potentially doing harm, they should make us aware that we're flouting the law and that there are consequences. To those who are looking on at the situation, we should be taken into the confidence of the police and says, this is why we're doing what we're doing. That doesn't mean that we're not intervening. There's a principle of non-intervention, which is a well-established principle of policing. That doesn't mean do nothing. It means in the course of managing real risk and threats, you do exactly what he's saying. Identify who's flouting the law, what are the elements of them doing this, and at the same time build a case to prosecute them even if it is at a later date.
Cognizant of what should be happening, and having called out the police last night in an interview here on eNCA, asking them very pointedly why there's very little police presence, why there have not been arrests, why they say that they're still investigating those behind, but we have yet to see concrete action on the ground at eNCA. Today is a very important day, despite the fact that the date on which former President Jacob Zuma has to hand himself over to prison authorities to start serving his jail time has been delayed, given that the Constitutional Court is now going to hear his application for a rescission. The fact that eNCA is still active today, that there are plans for the president to address supporters again today, what should police be doing, and why are they not doing anything? Should we be reading into the situation that there could be political motivation for them sitting on their hands?
Police run the real risk of being seen to be selective in enforcing the law. And the only way they can overcome this is to explain their rationale. They know, as you rightfully said, that today is an important day in eNCA, regardless of the fact that it's unlikely that the former president will present himself or there would be an attempt to arrest him. Police should have been out there all the way through the night, managing the flow of people coming there, impressing upon the president and any other organizers of a gathering where people are going to be addressed that it's not the most opportune time to do this. It's something that could be delayed. They can appeal to the sensibilities of those who are perceived to be organizing this. Failing to do that, they can actually rightfully communicate to them that action will be taken even if it's a later date, if they continue to proceed with their threats of calling a public gathering that places people at risk during this health pandemic.